Go inside the Crimson Tide with your hosts Rodney Orr and Gary Harris, keeping you informed on everything Alabama. And now, Tider Insider TV.
There aren't a lot of people who can lead an organization better than Nick Saban, but the Alabama football team received a visit from maybe one of them today. Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg stopped in Tuscaloosa today, made his way to the Malmore facility. You see him right there. Zuckerberg and his wife, Priscilla Chan, met with Alabama players as well as Coach Saban. The billionaire's made his way through Birmingham, Mobile, and Selma this week on his tour of the United States. So pretty cool right there. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Tider Insider TV, presented each and every week by Buffalo Rock, alongside Rodney Orr. Filling in again for Gary Harris, I'm Brandon Kamerman. We're hoping Gary will be back next week. Again, still working on his voice. He's lost it a little bit, but I heard him today. It's coming back. He's practicing his vocal warm-ups with us. Of course, Buffalo Rock today, we got Diet Pepsi. That's good. Rodney, you had it before everyone. Well, it's been rumored now for a couple weeks. New England Patriots tight ends coach Brian Daboll officially announced as Alabama's next offensive coordinator. The school also confirmed the hire of former director of football operations Joe Panunzio as special teams coordinator and tight ends coach. Now, before we get into analyzing how this offense is going to look and the offensive coaching staff, let's take a look at how it shapes up. Again, some movement from some other coaches who even have been here. Again, this is a unit that lost 4 coaches since the Peach Bowl. Daboll replaces Steve Sarkisian as OC. He'll also coach quarterbacks. Burton Burns remains the associate head coach and running backs coach. Brent Key now takes over the entire offensive line. Michael Locksley is the co-offensive coordinator. He'll also oversee wide receivers. And then we mentioned Joe Panunzio, the former director of football operations here at Alabama, is the special teams coordinator, as well as the tight ends coach. There will be no changes on defense. And let's get right into this. Rodney, you broke this before everyone else. You've been on this. You knew Daboll was a high candidate for the job, and then you were the one who had the information before everyone. What are your initial thoughts now that we know it is official?
Well, I think it's a really good fit for Alabama when you look at it. I think, you know, obviously he started out his career as a GA under Nick Saban in 1998, so he and Saban know each other really well. And I think also the fact that he's worked in a highly demanding organization such as the New England Patriots, had a tremendous amount of success. He has 5 Super Bowl rings. This guy knows what it takes, knows the dedication, the work, and all of that thing, all the things it takes to win and win on that level.
Let's talk about how this, again, affects the whole offensive staff, because there were some open positions. Again, we mentioned 4 assistants have left the program since the Peach Bowl. That includes Lane Kiffin, who left before the national championship. So there's been some movement. Now we know what Mike Locksley's role is. He's co-offensive coordinator, also oversee wide receivers. Brent Key now has the entire offensive line, essentially shared it with Mario Cristobal last year. How do you see this offensive staff shaping up?
Well, I think it's shaping up really well when you look at it, and I think a big part of that's going to be chemistry. And again, you talk about Mike Locksley. He's one of the best recruiters in the country. There's no question about that. He has a good reputation, a great reputation. In fact, as a coach, has done a great job coaching a lot of the skill positions throughout his career. So again, I don't think he's going to miss a beat. He was here last year. He already knows the personnel. So I don't think that's an issue at all. Brent Key basically handled most of the offensive line throughout a lot of the practices. So again, he's familiar with all the personnel, even the offensive tackles. So I think that there's really not going to be any issues in that regard. As far as Brian Daboll is concerned, I think, again, like I said, he's going to be an excellent fit because of his knowledge of Nick Saban and the things that he's done in New England and at the various places where he's been. I think he's bringing a tremendous amount of that knowledge here to Tuscaloosa, and I think it'll work out extremely well.
We're having some mic issues with me. We're trying to figure. I think I'm there right there. You hear me? All right, we're back. Sorry about that. We just had a little bit of mic issues, but I think we're back. So you were talking about Brent Key, and how about Joe Panunzio? Of course, he was just here a couple of years ago. Obviously was in a different role, but now will actually be on the field a little bit different for him.
Yeah, and again, I think he's got a great reputation, too, as a special teams coach. He's done a tremendous job at various places. He's been at Miami. He's spent a lot of years with Tommy Tuberville at Auburn. So, Joe Panunzio is really well respected throughout the coaching field. And, he's a guy that's been a tremendous recruiter as well. So he has a lot of experience in that regard. And, again, as a special teams coach, tight ends coach, a guy that really well respected. And the fact that he's been in this program here, working under Nick Saban as Director of Football Operations. He has a really good feel about how things operate, so I think it'll be a smooth transition.
And that's, I think, the biggest thing that I think a lot of Alabama fans want to hear. I mentioned no changes on defense. Defense is going to look pretty much the same in terms of the coaching staff. You still expect, even with all these changes on offense, there to be a smooth transition?
Yeah, I think the spring practice certainly will give that an opportunity for everyone to get acclimated with one another, and I really don't see any issues. Again, Brent Key's been here for a year. He's coached the offensive line. I don't think that's a big transition with Loxley either, so I feel really comfortable about that. And obviously, like I said, Panunzio's been around, and again, as Brian Daboll gets acclimated, I think everything will go really smoothly.
All right, well, still to come on Tider Insider Television, a look at some future Alabama basketball players in the AHSAA State Tournament. And speaking of Bama hoops, the Crimson Tide's coming off a huge 2-game winning streak. How's that shot at an NCAA tournament looking? Well, we'll discuss. And hey, I know I'm not Gary Harris, but you could still give us a call. We want to take your phone calls. I'm told we got nothing in right now. You can also email us. You can also send us a tweet. Go to hashtag TITV with your tweet. Include hashtag TITV, and we'll get it up on air. Give us a call. Send us a tweet. Whatever it is, we'll get in touch with you. We want to hear from you, and we will be right back on TITV. An NCAA tournament bid seemed unlikely just a couple weeks ago, but 2 more wins for the Alabama basketball team cast the tide in madness. Bama overcame an ugly first half to beat Missouri on the road 57-54 last Wednesday, and then on Saturday the Tide cruised to a 90-72 win at home against LSU. Alabama stays home for Thursday night's game against Georgia. And welcome back. I'm Brandon Kamerman, filling in tonight for Gary Harris, alongside, as always, Rodney Orr. At times, it seemed like the Tide was still kind of a year away, but now we're in late February, and Alabama is in contention, and not just for the NCAA tournament, but also for a bye in the SEC tournament. The top 4 teams get byes, and right now you're looking at the standings. Alabama's tied with Arkansas for 4th place. If the Tide gets that bye, they get an automatic bid into the SEC tournament quarterfinals in Nashville. Kentucky and Florida both tied for first with a record of 12-2. South Carolina is in third with a record of 10-4. And then, of course, Alabama and Arkansas, as I mentioned, vying for that 4th place spot with a record of 9-5. In related news, Coach Avery Johnson announced before the Tide's contest against LSU that Nick King and Brandon Austin will be out for the remainder of the season. King, a transfer out of Memphis, sat out last season due to NCAA transfer rules, but averaged 12.7 minutes per game this season before being shut down. The Tide forward has been out since November due to issues with his lungs. Austin is also out for the season with a non-surgical injury to his back. He's averaged 8.9 minutes per game this season. So disappointing there to lose those 2 players, but again, they've played most of the season without both of them anyways. We also found out that Shannon Hale is suspended. He'll be out for at least the rest of the regular season. But let's talk about this team. Again, I feel like it was just a couple weeks ago everybody was saying, oh, there's been some positives, but the NCAA tournament nobody was really thinking about. Now they just keep kind of getting these wins, and they're in contention.
Well, we've been talking about, you could kind of sense them taking that next step, and I thought against Missouri, the way they came back in that game on the road, I thought that was really impressive, and then they handled LSU really soundly over the weekend. So this is a team that you really sense Avery Johnson continues to get them to kind of develop and take that next step. Maybe last year they couldn't have won these games, but they found ways to do it. For example, the Missouri game, as we alluded to. But I just sense that he's really starting to get this team to believe.
And, of course, they get those 2 big wins. They got Georgia this week. There's only a couple weeks left. And how important to get that bye. I know it seems inconsequential, only 1 game. But you get that bye, that means you're automatically starting in the quarterfinals. And you win 3 games, then you're automatically qualifying for the NCAA tournament. If they happen to win that SEC tournament, I don't think it's out of the question that this team can win the tournament.
Oh, absolutely. I don't think there's any question about it. The way they're playing right now, we'll continue to see how they finish out the regular season. But I think, like I said, they continue to build momentum. They continue to play with more and more confidence and belief. And it's been impressive to me the way he's developed this team as it's gone along this season.
Almost quiet success there for Alabama. And moving on to the future of Crimson Tide basketball, John Petty had a dominant night for his high school. Petty's Mae Jemison Jaguars were in the regional semifinals, and the state's #1 senior put up 23 points with 7 rebounds and 5 blocks. Jemison plays for a spot in the state semis tomorrow afternoon. Another commit for Alabama men's basketball, Alex Reese, scored 14 points today. His Pelham Panthers came up short, though, against Paul Bryant. The Stampede moves on to the state semis next week, so some future Alabama basketball players looking pretty good at the high school level there over the last week. And coming up, we'll hear from Alabama baseball coach Greg Goff following the Tide's series opening win against Presbyterian. And again, give us a call. We want to take your phone calls, so you can take your tweets as well. Again, just put hashtag TITV on Twitter, ask a question, give us a call. Rodney and I are here. We'll answer your questions, whatever it may be, about Alabama sports. TITV returns right after this break.
I thought our guys just had a lot of energy. You saw guys, you know, when they come back to the dugout, they were all up there giving them high five and stuff. That is what it's all about. You know, wins and losses will take care of themselves, but if we get a bunch of unselfish players to play for each other, we will have a great year.
In his first series as Alabama's head coach, Greg Goff led the Tide to a series win over Presbyterian. Alabama will host Southern Miss tomorrow night, a game that was supposed to be tonight, but weather pushed it back to tomorrow, 6 o'clock first pitch. And we'll get right to the phone lines right now. We're going to start in Bluff Park and talk to Rick. Rick, how are you doing?
Hey, appreciate y'all taking my calls, fellas.
Thank you.
Brandon, you're doing a great job filling in for Gary, and I appreciate your efforts, buddy.
Thank you.
Gary, Rodney, I'd like to ask you about the long, tall defensive back from Blinn Junior College that committed to Alabama several months ago. What happened to him? And also, talk to me about Quentin Williams and any other redshirt freshmen that may really show up big for us this year. Yeah. Fellas, I appreciate you taking my call. Roll Tide, roll.
Roll Tide, Rick. Well, I think you're referring to Javante Dean, who had committed to Alabama maybe last summer. He was an outstanding, as you mentioned, cornerback out of Blinn Community College out in Texas. And I think he ended up at Miami. Again, he was committed to Alabama, but I think that was kind of a mutual parting there with him going to Miami. And some of the other red shirts, or some red shirts possibly, you mentioned Quentin Williams. I think he's got a chance to be a fantastic defensive lineman. When you talk about, you know, Alabama really needs some depth at that position, I think Quentin Williams is a guy to really keep an eye on. I think Ben Davis, obviously from Gordo, he's a guy with a lot of talent, a tremendous athlete. You know, we'll see how he progresses over the spring. But a guy on the offensive side, Brandon, that, you know, I really think fans need to watch over maybe the next year or so is going to be Scott Lashley, the offensive lineman from West Point, Mississippi. I think this guy's got a chance to be an outstanding player. I mean, he's got great size. He's got all the skills, all the tools, and I think as he develops, he's going to be a guy that's going to make a real strong impact.
It's one of the great things about Alabama. They can afford to redshirt some of these guys that other schools would be dying to start their true freshman season. Quentin Williams probably going to have a really good, successful career here at Alabama. Well, let's go next to CW in Hamilton. CW, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you, gentlemen?
Good.
Okay. I was wondering how the new offensive coordinator is going to affect the play calling, such as passing and running. Is it going to? We've got these good quarterbacks that's come in, and I just wondered how that it's going to impact that situation with them.
Well, CW, I think it's really a little bit early to start projecting that right now. I mean, I think maybe in spring practice we'll get a better feel for things. But when you look at the talent that Alabama has, a lot of the young offensive line talent, they have 4 or 5, maybe even 6 tremendous backs. When you talk about the true freshmen in with Najee Harris and Brian Robinson too, so they've got really some outstanding running backs. They're not going to get away from the running game. There's no question about that. They obviously have a lot of skilled people outside with Ridley and some of the other guys that are returning, Robert Foster and Cam Sims and some others. And then you've got 4 really outstanding freshman receivers coming in. Jerry Judy's already here. So, they've got a lot of skill, a lot of tight ends. They've got a chance to be really diverse on offense.
You mentioned the tight ends, of course. Daboll comes from being a tight ends coach with a pair of great tight ends. He's coached some great tight ends over in New England who had a lot of success in that offense. Different personnel, obviously a totally different system, a different league even. But do you think perhaps he could highlight the tight ends a little more?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's certainly that possibility. They've got some really, obviously some really good young tight ends. Hell, Hinches is still around. He'll already be a junior. Miller Forrestall was an outstanding player last year, more of an H-back type guy. And also, I really like Irv Smith. He was a freshman this year out of New Orleans who played some. And, they've got some guys coming in. Kedrick James, I really like him out of Waco, though he's really versatile. He could play on the defensive line as well. And Major Tennyson out of Texas, who's already in school here, will go through spring practice.
All right, let's stick on the phone lines. We'll go to Talladega with Brent. Brent, how are you?
How y'all doing?
Fred, sorry.
How y'all doing?
Good, how are you?
All right. My question is, and Rodney touched on it just a few minutes ago, how many of the players just getting here or coming this year are going to be part of the 2017-18 class can play both sides of the ball? And do you think any of them players that came for offense might go to defense, and one came for defense might go to offense? My other quick question is, how far do you think the Alabama basketball team can go in the SEC tournament, or if they make it, the NCAA tournament?
Yep. Well, as far as the guys coming in, like I mentioned, 16 are already here in school. So those guys get to go through spring practice. I think that's really valuable, gives them an opportunity to get acclimated. And if you look, for the most part, a lot of the guys who enroll early, they give themselves the best chance to contribute early, although Minka Fitzpatrick certainly did not fit into that. He was not an early enrollee. But with that said, I mentioned Kedrick James. I watch him. I think, he's a fantastic talent out of Waco, Texas. I mean, he is vastly underrated. He's a guy that is a really outstanding tight end, could be a tremendous tight end. But also, when you look at him, he's 6'5", 6'6", 260 pounds right now or close to it. He's a guy that he could fill out and really maybe become a defensive end. He's that talented. But, again, other guys maybe in this class that might switch positions, I've not really heard any mention of that, although I would say this, and I'm not saying this is going to happen. I want to be clear about that before I say it, but Henry Ruggs, the great receiver, kick return guy out of Montgomery, he's a guy that when you look at his skills, he could probably be an outstanding cornerback as well. Now, again, I'm not suggesting he's going to do that at all. I'm just saying when you talk about guys that have the skill to play the other side of the ball, he probably could do that.
A lot of talented pieces to play with. As for basketball, we touched on this. I think there's a chance that this team could run the table in the SEC tournament, which would automatically punch a bid to the NCAA tournament. We'll have to see about that, but they did lose to Kentucky and Florida already this year. Those are the two teams to beat in the SEC tournament. As for a run in the NCAA tournament, I think it would be far-fetched to say they have a chance to go all the way, but you get in. We've seen crazy things happen in that NCAA tournament. The important thing is getting in. We'll see about that. Still to come, Patrick Murphy discusses turning a new leaf after Alabama softball loses 2 straight at Louisiana Lafayette. And coming up, we'll take more of your phone calls, also your tweets, emails. Stay with us. TITV returns right after the break.
They got to see that environment and play in that, and that's what I wanted. So to me, it was a win-win for everybody. They're a good opponent. They're going to be in a regional. Hopefully they'll keep winning. Their RPI go up. That'll help us down the stretch. But, I'd rather get my butt kicked early in the season than later on. Learn from it now, because I think you'll learn a lot more about yourself and your team when you get beat than when you steamroll people. So I'm looking forward to tomorrow night, and I can't wait to see what we do.
A man who knows how to play it. Two uncharacteristic losses. Alabama lost by a combined 16 runs in games 2 and 3 at Louisiana Lafayette last weekend, but the Tide is back home looking to turn the page against North Florida tomorrow night. And we'll go right back to the phone lines. Caleb from Hubbartville is on with us. Caleb, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are y'all?
Good.
I was wondering, I know the coaching staff is full now, but I know a couple of days ago I had saw where there was a possibility that Dan Werner could join the staff as an analyst. I just wonder if there was still a chance of that, and I'll hang up with that. Thank you.
Yeah, Caleb, I think there probably is still a chance at that. I think he interviewed for that spot last week, Brandon, and I really like Dan Werner. He's got a great reputation. He's been around a long time. He's certainly developed a great reputation with the Miami Hurricanes when he was there, and Ole Miss did a fantastic job with that offense and the things that they did with Chad Kelly and those receivers, and even Bo Wallace before Chad Kelly. So, he's got a wealth of experience, and I think he would be a valuable addition, and I think it is a possibility.
All right, we'll stay here in Tuscaloosa. Let's talk to Leroy. Leroy, how are you? Leroy there? All right, well, he wanted to know what kind of offense, we've touched on this a little bit, what sort of style of offense you think Brian Daboll will run here at Alabama.
Well, again, I think, once he has an opportunity to evaluate the personnel, see what the strengths are, which, again, I've said I think Alabama's got a chance to really have an outstanding offensive line. I think they've got some really outstanding offensive linemen, obviously the running backs and, the receivers. I mean, they can be really diverse. I do think you're going to see a physical running game. I would expect that, but I do think they're going to utilize all their personnel, too.
It'll be exciting to see. Again, looking forward to spring ball. It's only just a little over a month away. Still to come. Watch Alabama tight end O.J. Howard as he prepares for the NFL Combine. He is quite an athlete, and you'll see it. You're watching Tider Insider TV. We're back right after this. Last week, we showed you former Alabama linebacker Ryan Anderson prepping for the NFL Combine. Well, this week, it's tight end O.J. Howard. The strength. We saw the talent he had here. But look at that. He just keeps going from heavier weight to heavier weight and makes it look like he's flipping pancakes or something like that. This guy flying up the NFL draft boards. Impressive performance for the former tight end. And a guy flying up the NFL ranks is former Bama linebacker D'Amico Ryans. Ryans was hired today as the 49ers defensive quality control coach. The Bessemer native spent 10 years in the NFL with Houston and Philadelphia. He was an All-American here at Alabama. I think he should be a pretty good coach. Our beautiful shirts are provided by the Locker Room in downtown Tuscaloosa. Shirts and ties. It's the home of the original elephant wear. Go by. Check out Alex Gatewood and his staff. They'll set you up with some nice elephant wear shirts, ties. They got pants. I saw it all. I was just there the other day picking up this nice combo I have right here. Locker-room.biz. You can go there if you can't get into the store online. And a reminder, it's the third Tuesday of the month, and that means we're heading to Buddy's. You can join us there, Buddy's Rib and Steak in Northport, for some good food. And don't forget, if you missed any of tonight's show, you can catch a replay after the 10 o'clock news at 10:30. Always go online. It's there at WVUA23.com. For Rodney Orr, I'm Brandon Kamerman. Thanks for joining. Have a great night.